Historical events follow a repeating pattern. Um, when I lived in California for a couple years when I was 19, and I actually was a missionary for my church. And while I was there, I happened to. It doesn't necessarily have anything directly to do with that, but that's how I met this guy. A friend of mine that I met in California while I was living there. His name is Merle, and he was an artist, teacher, and scriptorian based in Southern California. He's passed away since then, but he was in the midst of writing a book based on some discoveries that he made. But in the course of his lifetime, he made some discoveries about the way that events in history follow a typified, multi-layered, iterative pattern. This framework was derived from identifiable archetypes articulated and expressed by two distinct prophets in the New Testament, and these types manifest through both type and timing. To simplify, what I'm trying to say here is I'd rather just I wish his book was published, but he didn't publish it before. He was rewriting it, and he passed away from cancer before he could publish the book. I talked with his wife, and she's told me that her son is trying to publish it through other avenues, but so far it's not available. So you have to just believe me here and just take it from what I'm saying and try to extrapolate what it is I'm trying to say, because it's not necessary to see every single thing that he said in his theory, but I'll try to articulate what it is that I got from it. But to simplify, what he found was that there is a pattern in all things historical. His analysis showed that on various successive scales, smaller historical events were shadows of larger historical events. Each string of events were a microcosm, like a microcosm, within a greater macrocosm, each repeating the same types, the same shadows, the same patterns. The same pattern was restating itself over and over with the same rhythm and beat. There was recurring resonance in the events of the world, and they followed archetypes given to us specifically in the scriptures. One was in second or third Peter. I don't even know if there is a third Peter, but I wasn't familiar with the book that he was referring to, but it was something Peter. There's like a 10-day or something vision archetype that he is mentioned in a Revelation there, and in the book of Revelation specifically, the 7 days, like the seven seals, that Revelation where there's like an archetypical horseman and a seal opened and all that. That pattern of the horseman actually identifies a archetypical pattern that you can see on microcosms and macrocosms, like many different layers of I think it was the 1,000-year periods, as it states in the book of Revelation, but also each of those 1,000 years he broke into seven equal periods, and then looked for various events in history within those, and each of those 1,000 years actually had the very same 7,000-year archetypical pattern within that 1,000 years. And he did the same thing. He took that 1,000 years of each period of the earth as related within the context of Revelation, and he took it as if it was literally 1,000 years, not necessarily saying that the world was created in 1,000 years or is only 1,000 years old, but the history of mankind as seen from that point of view. So each 1,000 years was then broken into seven, and each of those seven he broke again into seven equal periods, and looked in history and found that this very same, well, he called it prophetic. I guess I mentioned it here. Through his work, Merle extrapolated that even the progress of the creation of evolutionary biology could be contextualized on this timeline and followed the same prophetic framework as he described it. He said it because it was referring to a type that was found within Scripture. He was looking at it as if it was coming from a prophetic framework, or you could say from a God's perspective kind of framework, that there was this repeating pattern. or prophetic framework. Significant temporal events such as, so I said earlier that he even was able to look at, I don't remember how he did it. I think it was like he started going outwards, but he looked at somehow, I don't know how many, like the 7,000 was broken into, it was made into one, and I don't know how he put it together, but the he used that same archetypical pattern, and he looked at the history of from a evolutionary perspective, the Big Bang and all that, like the history of to where we're at today, and he looked at the progress of, like, the way that scientists say that, or at least evolutionary biologists say, that the development of life over the millions of years. He took the full scale that they have given, and he looked at specific events as to where, like, specifically, like, say, I think the way he described it was like in the 7,000 years is the Bible, where Christ comes into it in the play of the 7,000 years. He overlaid that type over the however million years of the progress of creation, and he said that, fascinatingly, that where they say that the introduction of oxygen into the biology of life was like coincided with the introduction of Christ in that 7,000 year period of the symbolic development of man. So oxygen and Christ, like, coincided. So essentially, what that meant to me is, I mean, it's like it's symbolic. It says more about the meaning of things, I think, than anything. But essentially, so what did I say? Significant temporal events such as the development of significant, I'm redundant, the development of significant biological processes coincided archetypically with events of spiritual significance with remarkable precision. So I noticed, I saw that, and I was like, oh, wait, so there's a pattern? So it's like the events of the world have, like, it's not necessarily that they're being controlled per se, because they're not, like, exactly the same, but so close that there's obviously, like, resonating patterns, that there is resonating patterns, and that there's some degree of, not fate, but that of ability to understand the interactions of things and how they will interact, which goes back to what we believe as far as that God has foreknowledge of things, and how does he know that they are going to happen without being the determiner of whether they will happen? And so that, like, struck me, and I remembered that as these ideas were developing. Okay, so historical events follow a repeating pattern. That's the title of this section, and it was thanks to Merle's discovery that I came to believe and understand, because he had this timeline where it was, like, written out. It was this massive, like, not butcher paper, like, it was nicer than that. It was like he had, with rulers, and, like, there is this massive map of time that he had written out that was incredible. But again, I don't have access to it because it's not published, but eventually it will be, and as soon as it is, you can bet your bottom that I will have it listed and be promoting it. I really wish that book was available, because it would very much help my my own work, and I would be flattered to be able to help promote his work. It's really sad that he was gone before he was able to bring it to light, but such is life. And he was okay with that.